So last year, I had a wake up call. I was about to go to bed and realized I had suddenly lost feeling in the left side of my body. I told my girlfriend Danielle this, and because I tend to joke around a lot, she immediately responded skeptically. What do you want me to do about it? I told her, no, seriously, I can't move the left side of my body. Here, I'll show you. And then, in a pathetic attempt, I was able to move my body slightly to the right. And she responded, what was that supposed to be? And then I say, well, I was attempting to caress your face lovingly. Fast forward a week, and I'm in the hospital. I get diagnosed with MS, and I have to go to rehab to regain the strength in my left side. There were a few things that really crossed my mind during this period. Just a few out of many, many hours of thinking. They don't make MRIs to accommodate larger people. At the time, I was 373 pounds, my heaviest recorded weight. And then the last thing I thought was, I'm 35 years old. And I couldn't help but thinking that I'm only 15 years from being 50. And I'm in a hospital bed already. So I decided that I needed to start taking things seriously, and like a bride preparing for her wedding, I needed to lose some weight so that I could fit in that MRI. My goals were to focus on my health. To get my mind right, to get my weight down, to minimize the elements that put me in the hospital bed to begin with. I started with education, watched a lot of documentaries, read a lot of books, tried to figure out, what my path was going to be in order to get those pounds down. I needed to understand how I got there again, because frankly, 9 years ago, I had already dropped a ton of weight, and I did so by accident. I really didn't know exactly how it happened. Retrospectively, I walked a lot. I had 2 jobs, one of them being a coffee shop job, so that helped boost my metabolism. And then I didn't really have much time to eat outside of 1 time a day, and usually what I was eating was a meat and a vegetable. So I had taken that loss for granted, and I put myself in the same place my body was already used to being my entire life. I'd always been large. I hadn't lost weight until those 9 years ago. So that was the first time that I was actually at a healthier weight. But I still don't take that for granted. The process of losing the weight and gaining it back. And the reason I don't take that for granted is because I think I learned something from that, which was I didn't have to suspend my belief that I could lose weight. I didn't have to suspend my belief that I could get stronger so that I could be more physically active. Because that had already happened. Most people are stuck in this limbo of thinking that it's not possible. So I just needed to figure out my plan as to how I was going to go about doing this. And, first I needed to realize that I had a food addiction, an addiction that's only exacerbated by a food culture that ignores common sense guidelines. I go into a supermarket and I'm like a cocaine addict surrounded by piles of cocaine. There's bread, there's sugar, there's all of these terrible things for you, and they're all usually the first thing you see. So I cut out carbs. I thought that was the easiest thing to do to start. It's hard, but at that point I had enough of an emotional anchor to do so. And I kept on saying things like, yeah, that smells good, but that company is trying to profit off of my death. So using those kinds of mnemonic devices and phrases and philosophy, I pushed myself forward, and I was able to lose about 40 pounds. I got down to like around 330. At that point, I felt comfortable adding in some physicality to the mix, so I started looking up options, gyms that were local. The thing that kept on popping up to me was I really needed something that would help me both from a social aspect as well as a motivational aspect. If you go to the gym, the silence only gets deafened by the voices in your head. You walk into a gym, you see all these people that look pretty fit, that are working out, you feel like you don't belong. I definitely had those voices, and I still have those voices to an extent. And my friend Dan, he'd been using CrossFit for a really long time. He'd been talking only positive things about it for a real long time. But needless to say, when you're a big boy who's addicted to food and doesn't like physicality, the last thing you want to do is hear how cool CrossFit is. But I'm grateful to him because he did embed this idea that it was something that was a little bit more than just going to a gym. He had been doing it for 4 years. He looked the best he'd ever looked, and he talked about it like he was addicted to that in the way that I talk about food. So I called up Pete at Zanshin in October as a rebuke to my former self trying to convince me that I was too cool for CrossFit. And the thing that really stuck with me in that conversation was this element of motivation that I seemed to struggle to create for myself. Pete's a super nice guy, very easy to talk to, doesn't make it about the really larger than life parts of CrossFit. He makes it about how can we adapt this to where you are and where you're going. He mentioned the idea of scaling nutrition and gave a sense that if I just show up, I won't be left behind. Karen was my introductory trainer. Their onboarding never gave me a sense that I didn't belong. And they never gave me a sense that I couldn't do what they asked. They never made me feel like I was in this alone. I still have a long way to go. I despite all of the good things that have been brought into my life going to Zanshin, I still feel like I've got a ways to go, and I've visualized a particular version of myself that's gonna be as strong as those top athletes. But adding in that program with a trainer was so vital to me being able to silence those voices that would have otherwise compelled me to stay home, eat that candy bar, or lay in that hospital bed. And to be honest, I'm just done being a patient.